But yeah, watching that video is always bittersweet because it's kind of like I ask like did they know like they said like John Cleese there said that he that they're not working on a movie currently, so the game kind of fills a void. But I just wonder like how much was already determined at that point that we're rebooting the series, we're getting a new Bond, we're Q's gonna be gone. We're getting it. Miss Moneypenny's gonna be gone at least for the first. I think it was the first two movies with Daniel Craig. Um, it was only Judi Dench that stayed, and I'm happy about that. She's amazing. She's a really good M. But yeah, it's bittersweet. To see that, to watch that. And I have to say that John Cleese, like, I don't know, like, he's only in two movies. He's kind of like the backup guy in The World Is Not Enough, and then he's the main guy in Die Another Day, and it's the end of an era, and like literally because of they finally rebooted the original continuities over with. Not much it feels like. Not that there feels like there was ever that much continuity because if you wanted to be honest, like Bond is like he would be like what in his 60s or something. Like he would be if you were to assume that in the first movie back in 1962 that he's let's just say he's 20, exactly 20. Okay, we're just kind of going as young as we can. Um, and then you go to Die Another Day. That's 40 years. Like he's at least 60. If you like, obviously, even if you wanted to put him like a young age, you'd probably put him more on 24 or 25 because you'd still want to assume he's like a agent with some experience, right? But like, he's like minimum he's late 50s if you were to say he was like 1918, but obviously reality wouldn't be you wouldn't think he's that young, and especially like Sean Connery doesn't look that young when he's playing him. Um, so yeah, you would have to think like if they actually cared, he would be in his 60s. I think it would have been cool if when Roger Moore retired, because like when Roger Moore had to give up the role because he was 57, right? And that would have been believable for like from 1962 to 1985. Like that would have been like believable. Like yeah, Bond's pretty old now. And then if they rebooted and let's say they had Brosnan in 89, like 87, 88, whenever they could get that first movie out, if they were willing to wait for like maybe his contract to move, or like it's one of those things where it's like maybe if like they just could you imagine if Roger Moore didn't immediately retire and they kind of just almost went into limbo, like just pause things to kind of wait out Pierce Brosnan's contract, and then Roger Moore comes out says he's retiring, that he's done with the role, and that Pierce Brosnan's like, it's one of those things where it's like if only, right? If only someone looked at like that contract and say, hey, well, we should probably wait because the publicity could reinvigorate interest in Remington Steele, and then Pierce Brosnan could get screwed out of the role. Oh, I see. It says you have to complete on OO agent. Right. That kind of thing. So there's always gonna be a lot of what ifs. I think if you like Pierce Brosnan, he aged really pretty well. I think you could have even pushed him to do the to do the 50th anniversary movie. I think you would have to play in a bit into his age, for sure. But like he was still damn good looking at like 57, 58 years old. And sometimes too, like you wonder, like if Brosnan was a bit younger, would they have been willing to keep him around longer? Like there's always gonna be these questions, and they always go through my brain because I am such a big Brosnan fan, and like it just. I was reading an article some time ago that kind of like gives a title to each Bond. So um, like Sean Connery, they call him like the original because the Lazenby was like the one-off, the outlier, I think. I can't remember what they called Roger Moore. I think they called him the senior. I think that's what they called him. Timothy Dalton was the rogue, and Pierce Brosnan was the wasted. And I totally agree with that title. Like, it just feels like wasted potential with him. And it's not, obviously, it's not that he, like, Brosnan himself. I totally feel like that he was getting better for every movie. He felt more in the role with every movie, if you ask me. But it just feels like such a waste of like potential. Had they rebooted the series, like done an official reboot with Brosnan, like could have been so fun if he got the role back in the 80s instead. Would have been really interesting to see how things could have been different. Like all these what ifs, right? And I think the thing that sometimes it's easy to lose is to just be thankful that he got to do the role in the first place, right? The fact that he, was screwed out of the role and got to even come back and do it. Especially too, because it's not like it was just handed to him in '94. Like obviously, Dalton could have done more if he wanted to. Because the thing is, even if Dalton did 1-2 more movies, right, let's just say Dalton sticks around, they get a movie out in '94 and they get a movie out in '96, and then he says, I'm done. Okay, so now the next movie is likely coming out in '98, maybe '99, and Brosnan at that point is now more in his mid-40s. If Dalton decides, hey, I'll do one more, I think he's born in 47, so let's say he'll do a fifth movie that's in '98. And then he's done, and then like you get a Brosnan that's like in his mid-40s, getting into his late 40s, and maybe they say that's a little too old for us at that point, Maybe they kind of want to avoid another like Roger Moore situation. Like there's a lot of what ifs, even there too, like that, like, so there's that possibility that could have happened, and then there's also just the fact that like other actors were obviously approached too, even I know like Liam Neeson. I'm trying to remember if Sam Neill was someone they approached. I can't remember. I don't think so. I just know Liam Neeson because it's funny because at the time he declined the role because of his wife not wanting him to do that. I think like they were getting married. But he also declined it because at the time he wasn't really into action movies. You got to remember this would have been like 93, 94, probably 94 when they approached him about it. So he's only a year older than Brosnan, roughly. But yeah, at the time he wasn't also really into action movies, which is ironic considering he would do Taken and stuff later. It's funny because when he started doing action movies, he was already like in his 50s, and it's like mid 50s even. He was already on the older side, so he was a very like late bloomer into action movies, you could say. So I know obviously like in general a lot of people don't enjoy the second, third, and fourth movies. I really enjoy the third and fourth movies. The fourth movie I grew up with, I have a lot of nostalgia for it, and I think Brosnan is just at his like I said, he just seemed to get better with every movie in the series he did, and I feel he was just at his most comfortable in that movie. Obviously, I know he wasn't happy with like the direction, and he wanted to do like more he wanted to have more serious movies. He didn't quite agree with the over the top, crazy kind of stuff they were doing in those later movies. But to me, he doesn't show in his performance. He seems to be absolutely. I wouldn't say he. I wouldn't say like I think Roger Moore is like the definition of someone enjoying themselves in the role of playing James Bond. And I wouldn't say Brosnan has like that same level of seeming to enjoy it, but like I still think he totally, despite what he has said later on after the role, that he never quite felt comfortable and never felt good enough, that kind of stuff. To me, he always seemed so natural in it. He just seemed like, as I've seen other people, like some people just believed he was born for the role. It just seemed like his role. And it's such a shame that he only got to do the 4 movies. And, again, in most people's eyes, he did some of the worst movies in the series. So, yeah, I'm sorry for the ramble. It just I love Brosnan as Bond so much, and watching that video, it's kind of bittersweet because it's like a lot of those faces are gone after that. It really feels like they all deserved 1 or 2 more movies. It's a lot of emotions, a lot of feelings I have for it. Because I've read extensively into what it was like when Brosnan got let go. That they did it like over the phone. And you have to remember too that things initially, and I bought a book, like one of those books too, that when No Time to Die finally came out, and goes through every movie, talks about how kind of things were and how things we're talking about, and there's some information in there I've never been able to find online, and there were talks for a 5th movie for Brosnan. I think even in like the Die Another Day, I don't know if it's during the like where they talk over the movie. I don't think it's that. There's just something else where they're talking like a interview or something after the movie that they like. He even said, like everything's good. It seems like I'll be back for a 5th movie. We're working on it. And it's just like that's what hurts, because things were initially like, hey, we're gonna do another movie, and then whether it be industry changes, obviously, like I think like the Bourne Identity is the main one people point to. It's just like going for the more serious kind of gritty movies. When Bond was being more, I really like I say, it's his movies were, besides GoldenEye, very much product of their time kind of dealio, where I feel like those with CGI becoming more and more of a thing, and I think we still really enjoyed those kind of over the top action movies. And the thing to remember is that his movies did gross very well, and Die Another Day earned a lot of money. It really did. A lot of people went to see it. And I have to feel like for some people it was just because it's Brosnan as Bond. I feel like for some people it's just we love him as Bond. Obviously it's James Bond, so some people are going to go see it regardless, but I have to, like, I'm sure there are a number of fans that were seeing it because it's Brosnan as Bond. But yeah, it's just hearing that things were going so well, and then things started to stall out, and then next thing you know, he's being told, hey, we're letting you go, and they're doing it over the phone. Because it's one of those things where it feels like they could have started working on the reboot, but also given Brosnan one more movie, Because since there's a 4-year gap, it really feels like they could have got another movie out in 2004, and then had the Daniel Craig reboot in 2006. I would have loved it if they did the reboot and kept Brosnan. I know he would have been on the older side. He would have been if let's just say that they get the reboot out in 2005. That year he would have been turning 52, right? If you could have got a few more movies out before his age catches up with him and that kind of thing. It helps that he aged as well. He aged pretty well, but I'll say you don't know, because like I always say, there's kind of that point where your age just catches up with you at some point, right? In this case, we're talking about looks. Like, you can look so good, like you can look like you're still in your 20s or 30s, or just be a handsome devil into your 50s, and totally like people can think you're like 10, 15 years younger than you really are because you look so good. But at some point, your body just says, and now we're aging. Like, I know Tom Cruise, he's like 60 and he still looks so damn good. He still looks like, I don't think you would be surprised if you thought someone was maybe like if someone thought he was in his mid 40s or something, right? It's just one of those things where it's like, yeah, you don't know when the white hair is going to start coming, and the wrinkles are really going to start to show up, and yada yada yada. Yada yada yada. But yeah, I could go on forever like this because it's just a crying shame and it hurts. It's like, why can't I live in a different timeline where Brosnan got to do 10 movies or something ridiculous, right? And it helps too because I think he cherished the role. He appreciated the role a lot more than some of his than other people that played the role. Like Daniel Craig, I've heard him complain about playing the role a lot. And I know Pierce Brosnan's even given him like advice on the role. But Daniel Craig has talked about how he'd rather slash his wrist than play Bond again. To some extent, Sean Connery, because Sean Connery even was like, I don't want to be typecast. I kind of want to go on do other things, and I won't say he like utterly hated the role. He wanted to move on, and I totally get that and respect that. He didn't want to be typecast, as he said. He didn't want everyone to just know him as Bond. Timothy Dalton is one, like, if you know the story, from what I read, they approached him many, many times to play the role. Like, I think far back as, like, the first time Sean Connery retired, which is crazy because he would have been, like, 20. So they approached him, like, after Sean Connery retired for the first time, after George Lazenby left, after Sean Connery left for the second time, and he said no all those times. And that was obviously all in a very tight time span. He would have only been like, the first time he would have been like, what, 20, 21. The third time he would have only been like 24, 25. It would have been crazy to think, like, could you imagine if he accepted that role back in like 68, 69, whatever, and he could have played that role like into the 2000s, the mid 2000s, if he really wanted to push it. He could have played that role for a long time if he really wanted to, because of how young they were approaching that. And then they approached him even after, like, once Brosnan couldn't accept the role, they approached him after, and he finally said, like, okay, I'll do it. Only if you guys wait for this movie for me to finish this movie, though. I think that's why, like, one of the movies was, I think that's why, like, the one movie was the summer release. I can't remember. But yeah, like, it's kind of crazy how many times they approached Dalton for the role when he always said no. And I mean, to be fair, when they were approaching him early on, he was still very young. So I kind of respect the fact that he was saying no. The also thing to remember is, like, I'm sure Bond was big, but I don't know if it would have been as big as it was after, like, Roger Moore did the role for so long and stuff. But still, to turn down something that big at that young of age, like, I respect him for that. That is some like clear thinking there, like smart guy, you know. I mean, you could say the other way around too, that it's kind of dumb on him to pass on such a role, but if he feels he wasn't ready for it, maybe he didn't have the acting chops that he feels for it, like whatever. It's crazy that someone that young would turn down a role that big. And yeah, and just so like the deal was after he had a contract for 3 movies, but I think there was like a time, an amount of time. If like an amount of time had passed, the contract would be void or whatever, right, for the last movie. So because that was after License to Kill, MGM was having money issues, and it stalled on the movie production. And then, like, you know, as we know, there was a 6-year gap. But with the 3 or 4 years that passed, basically 5 years, like he was allowed to, like, say, you know, it voided the last movie on the contract, basically, right? And he said, I'm not returning for another one. And I want to say, I do like Timothy Dalton's Bond. So, I'm also glad he got to do the role. Yes, I would have been more happy if Brosnan got the role back then. But if, like, I do wish Timothy Dalton also got to do, like, I wish the money problems didn't happen, and I wish he got a 3rd film, maybe a 4th film in there as well. But that's not how things turned out, obviously. So it would have been really fun if they did manage to squeeze out a 30th anniversary film in 92. That could have been, you know, his last one. See what they could have done with him in another serious role. And I think, like, it's why it's hard for me to judge him. It's hard to like give the best ranking of him just because he only did the 2 movies. I think, like, part of it is seeing him in more situations and the role and how he handles it gives you, like, a better idea of how well they are actually at playing the character. Just seeing them in more and more situations and more time in the role to see them develop. Like, Bond's not a character that obviously goes through personality changes and whatnot. Not really, especially in the classic continuity. But to still see an actor just have to play in more different and unique situations in each movie, and especially like in action scenes, how well he handles it and stuff. It's the reason why, like, I think I would have put him. I would be willing to have him, like, 2nd on my list if he did at least, you know, another 1 or 2 movies. Even. But because of just the limited screen time, I'm pretty sure I have Roger Moore as my 2nd favorite. Just because he did the role a lot, and I enjoy his performances, the character, and I enjoy his quips and lines, and the overall, like, how, you know, for his time, how Bond was. Anyway, I've been talking for like half an hour, 20 minutes, 25 minutes. I'm sorry. You get me a Bond, I can ramble for quite a while because I love the character. I love especially anything to do with Brosnan as Bond. Just anything like that, I am all over. But it's just, yeah. Brosnan, he got screwed out of the role because of the Remington Steele contract, and then he got, as he put it, kicked to the curb. So he was booted from the role early, basically, and I think to me, he's the only actor who didn't get to go out on his own note, or at least on a more understandable situation, right? Sean Connery left the role because he was tired and didn't want to be typecast as the character. He wasn't booted from it. He left on his own terms. George Lazenby, from my understanding, I feel like I've heard different reasons on why he left the role. I was told that his agent said that Bond wouldn't be a successful character in the 70s. So he said just do it once, get the get the fame as of get the fame of having played Bond, and then leave the role because he didn't think Bond would be successful in the 70s, the liberated 70s is what I read. There could be a different reason for that. And I think I've talked about Lazen, maybe I haven't talked about it on YouTube, but I just, to this day, I can't fathom how they got Lazenby because he had no acting, basically no acting experience. He did commercials. He was a model for the time, and I guess he looked good for the time, but I honestly don't think he's a very good looking guy. They had to do voice dubs, and he's in one of the best Bond movies, like one of the better ones, like top 10. But anytime I see someone say like that he was a good Bond, or they think highly of him because he was in a good Bond movie, no, just no. Like, objectively, his performance as the character is bad. He's so wooden, so stiff. They had to do voiceovers for him at certain parts. I just don't think he ever really shows the emotion in certain roles, in certain parts. He's a bad Bond, okay? He's in a good Bond movie, but I would have been so much happier if Connery or Moore was in it, or even even Dalton, if he would have taken that role. But that's not what happened. Roger Moore, obviously, he aged out of the role, which you could say maybe he's not leaving on his own terms, but I think he understood he was too old for it. And still, you're being forced out for a very understandable reason. We need someone younger playing Bond because he's a womanizer, and it kind of looks creepy when, someone that looks like they are actually in their late 50s is bedding women that are younger than when he's older than that person's mom, Dealio, and it doesn't look right. I've said before that it's not so much the age of the actor that I care about, it's about how they look. Do they look believable as someone who can still be a womanizer, who can still get women to want to sleep with him in bed, right? The guy can be 56, but if he looks like he's in his mid 40s and very handsome, or even if it's in his early 50s, even if he looks like he's in his early 50s but he's still very handsome, I can buy it. That it doesn't bother me as much. I know the biggest thing I'll give here is, so his second last movie, Roger Moore's second last movie, is Octopussy. In that movie, he's 56, I think, 55, 56. But I can still buy him. But I can still buy women falling for him because he's still very good looking. He's aged, and he's definitely got that worn look to him where you could tell he's on the older side, but he's still, in my eyes, just handsome enough and just young looking enough. He still looks young enough for women to fall for him, It's one of those I can't remember the word for it, but it's still, for me, he still looks good enough for women to fall for him. Where the 2 years between that movie and A View to a Kill, he had eyelift surgery, which made him look. Again, it's one, like I was saying before, maybe the age just really caught up with him in those 2 years. But I also think that eyelift surgery just gave him this wide eye look, and he looks so much older, and also in just the action scenes, he just like there are so many stunt doubles. Like I feel like any like second viewing of that movie, second, third viewings of that movie, you'll just notice like stunt doubles. And even in a lot of scenes, he just seems to be like out of breath, struggling with a lot of the action scenes. Like he just seemed like, yeah, he wasn't fit for the role anymore. I think he said like he was still felt like he was in shape and stuff, and I'm sure for that age he was, and obviously that was the 80s, so there was different probably standards of what would be in shape for that age, but yeah, he wasn't fit for the role. I know some people will go back, say, even for Octopussy or even the movie before that he was too old, but for me, like, yeah, I definitely think that if they could have got someone else for A View to a Kill, would have been good. With A View to a Kill, it would have been so fun if they actually played into his age for once, because he clearly looks old. If they would have played into his age just a little bit in that movie, it would have been so... It would have added a lot to that movie, you know? Just some little quips here and there. Some like a little conversation, say, you know, have you considered retirement? That kind of thing. And if he didn't bed the Bond girl in that movie, and especially the other girl, Mayday, the black girl. I don't remember the actress's name, so forgive me. If he didn't bed her as well, but mainly with the Bond girl, if he didn't bed her, and it was almost more of like a dad role or grandpa role, if you would, where he's almost kind of more taking care of her. That would have been like really sweet, you know, just to see he's kind of accepted that he's old, that he's no longer that young suave gentleman. He can still be a gentleman, just, you know, he can't play that role anymore of I forget what it's called, just charming women, you know. And Craig is also leaving the role on his own terms, right? He's as difficult as it sounds like he's been. He's still saying, you know, I'm done. This is my last movie. Obviously, he's in his 50s too. So, and it's important to remember this movie's been delayed for like a whole year. Think about this. We only had 2 Bond movies in the 2010s, which kind of worries me. Like, could Bond be at an end? Or are we just going to see like insanely long productions on Bond movies now? Which would be bad, because it would mean if you want to, you'd have to get an even younger actor to play the role longer if they're going to have like 3, 4, 5 year gaps between movies, right? We'll see what happens with that. But yeah, Brosnan is the only one who didn't get to leave on his own terms, or at least it like. Yes, they were rebooting the series, but he was still young enough and good, and especially good looking enough to play the role. And he has the experience, you know. Like, you kept Judi Dench as M. You could have kept him as Bond. That's how I feel about it. Genuinely. He's the only one who was kicked out of the role because it was just in it at a bad time, and he had to do bad movies because of just how things were at the time. And you know, I always say it's not his fault. He doesn't direct the movies. He's not the producer. He's not the screenwriter, screenplay. He just plays the character, and the only control he has over is the character. And even then, you know, like he has to. It's not like Bond is just gonna become a completely different person when another actor takes over, right? You always have certain expectations with Bond that have to be fulfilled, right? the most he did was like little things like the straightening the tie kind of things, and like he had his little inputs, but obviously he's not writing the story for the movies. He's not writing the screenplay. He's not making the music. If he thinks the music's done, he's not choosing who's performing the main song. And I say this with frustration because I hate reading lists that say he's a bad Bond because he was in bad movies. That's not fair to him. I firmly believe he did everything he could with the role and with the material he was given. I believe he knocks it out of the park every time. But everything going on around him in a lot of those movies, mainly everything after the first movie, is not good. I'm not like the funny thing is I'm not even a big fan of GoldenEye because I find the movie too slow for my liking. And maybe this is the thing because I watched it as a kid and I didn't like the pace of it as a kid. I felt it was too slow because I was a kid and I wanted explosions. I wanted gunfights. And I always enjoyed the pacing of Die Another Day more, where I always found the non-action scenes to be more interesting to watch, and then the action scenes better and more fun to watch than what GoldenEye had. Don't get me wrong, like the tank chase sequence, like the action scenes in GoldenEye are pretty fucking awesome, but it's just as a kid, it always felt like there was such a long time between those scenes, you know? Again, I was a kid. I understand now why GoldenEye is considered a classic, one of the best. But I just don't share those feelings. So when I'm talking about the second, third, and fourth Brosnan movies, it's from the fan perspective that most people don't think those movies are good. Die Another Day is often at the bottom of the list, or like it's pretty much always bottom 3 at least. You know, there might be one person. There's a few people who might put something else under Die Another Day, maybe like Quantum of Solace or something. But you don't see that very often. And then movies like The World Are Not Enough and Tomorrow Never Dies tend to fall within the lower tier to maybe the mid tier, if someone likes them. And then GoldenEye is usually near the top. I don't think I need to say that, but yeah. Like I said, it was at Bond at a very unfortunate time, where it kind of felt like Bond was following the trends of the time. After GoldenEye, it just felt like Bond kind of was. You could almost say on autopilot if you want that, and it was following the trends of the time, which it would be interesting to look at past Bond movies from like from the 80s, 70s, and 60s to kind of say, were they following the time? Were they trendsetters, following in the footsteps of others, always kind of an outlier in their times, right? Yeah. I think that's all I have to say. This will probably be uploaded as one big part. This whole end section. I don't. I like. There's no reason to split it up because not like there's any bonus footage to see here, right? What a good name, Train Chase. We couldn't think of an old name, so we just named it Train Chase. And Sandstorm, someone in the name department couldn't really think of anything. Well, it's going to be fun to edit this stuff together because even with what I was doing, I still don't think it was perfect. So there's still going to be a bit of trying to sync up the commentary as best as I can. But, I'm genuinely very happy to have this game done. It's I experienced basically the last of the Brosnan Bond content. I'm happy with the game. I kind of wish, I wish there was a bit more of a movie direction-esque with it. I wish we had more cutscenes, more heavy dialogue with Brosnan, with Bond. I keep saying Brosnan because just getting to hear any extra voice work from him as Bond is awesome. So, yeah, I'm happy to have this game under my belt now. I do think it's something special, and I think it's something that, I would recommend playing it. If you're a Bond fan, I think it's worth a play. Some frustrations, yes. I think it's kind of just because it was in a genre that wasn't quite as well defined yet, and they had to do their own take on a lot of things, And I think that's another reason why like some licensed games were kind of bad, is because they weren't forced to be as creative, right? They could just choose a genre and kind of do a very basic take, a copy and paste, if you will, right? Kind of like how Harry Potter, the later Harry Potter games basically became like Gears of War clones. So yeah, it's a little bit of jank with the mechanics, the controls. I definitely think with the button layouts, mainly just the things to do with like equipping weapons and whatnot, could have been handled so much better. I think it's kind of wonky, done a little poorly. Do you even really use the Y button for anything in this game? I don't think you do. Not for much, at least, right? For instance, I wish these interludes were just more. I wish they had more in them, more substance, more talking. I honestly wish Miss Moneypenny was there, that they had her, because kind of feels like missing face there, missing person. And I do wonder if there was a reason they couldn't get her, if they just felt like there wasn't enough of a reason, or she was just tied up with another movie or something, right? Whatever the reason may be, it sucks that she wasn't in here. Anyway, this has been one hell of a long ramble. I'm glad the game is done, in a good way, not a bad way. Plan is to play a spooky game next. Obviously, I know we're past Halloween at this point, but I still want to do something spooky. I still have to finish uploading the Spyro. Obviously, I'll have to edit all this James Bond stuff together. That will be fun. That will take up some serious time. And then I'll have my next playthrough. And then the plan is to probably get back to Spyro after I finish the spooky game. Probably get back to the first Legend of Spyro game. Is probably what's going to happen. I'm I still seeing enough Spyro around and stuff that and especially with like wanting to know like is there a Spyro 4 coming? What's happening with that? I genuinely hope like that we'll get an announcement either late this year or early next year, right? Because they kind of have to if they're actually going to do anything with the IP. With the names, I think is more to do with it. I mean, Activision owns Spyro, but like the names and whatnot, or whatever they claimed, they have to do something with that soon. But this is James Bond, not Spyro, so save all that speculation for another time. Hopefully, by the time I actually get to Spyro, it'd be cool if Spyro 4 was announced, so maybe we could talk about it. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. This is a little heartfelt for me, if you guys actually listen to all this ramble, thank you. I'm gonna make sure that in the title or something I let you guys know there's a lot of rambling here at the end because like I like to share my thoughts in the game, but I also want to share these stories and some of the knowledge that I know and stuff, right? So I really need to get this all closed up though. So we're almost at 6 hours, and obviously like some of this has to get cut out for some of this has to get cut out for obvious reasons. I have some. I really hope that this whole capture card thing, whatever's going on with it cutting out sometimes during loading screens, I really hope that it's just that is just a this game problem and not something wrong with the capture card. Because again, it only happened during loading screens, so that's why I think it's more of a problem just tied to this game and not the capture card. Alright. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really do mean it this time. If you stayed the whole way through, thank you. I love you guys. And I will see you next time. Ciao for now. Bye.